What's up everyone, Cardi-C here. If you tuned into my video the other day, we walked through an Excel workbook that was loaded with different formulas, and we used an application or an add-in called Solver in order to identify different scenarios to maximize our sort of personal identification, maximize our personal scoring for a particular card in order to help plan out our spending for the upcoming year. And I promised you then that I would do sort of a deep dive and a walkthrough of how to build a workbook out like that. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. But before we hop in, if it's your first time here, I'm Cardi-C. Welcome aboard. If you enjoyed today's video, please consider leaving a thumbs up and subscribing for future content. A little bit of background before we hop in. I work a decent amount with Excel, and building this out was a little bit tricky. So if you are an Excel beginner, it might take you a little bit of time, so feel free to pause the video at any given point and sort of follow along with what I'm building out here today. All right, this is what the finished product looks like. There's a lot in here that we sort of need to build from scratch and we need to populate. So the first step is all the cards that we're looking to consider. As I had mentioned in my previous video, these are the cards that I'm looking to pick up for 2021. But in total, in my sort of ideal grade, it would cost $18,500, and I only have $2,700 to play around with. So what I had done is I had put in my ideal target grade and what the current price is, along with sort of a budget version. There's obviously a trade-off between grade and cost, and I tried to sort of build out through my scoring scale how to sort of factor that in and rate that in my own opinion. This is my own opinion for my own collection. So step number one is to go populate the list of cards that you want to add to your collection, along with the grades and the current price. Step number two is figuring out a way to score these cards. Now, what I had done is I had rated them 1 through 10 on 5 different criteria, whether the player was a PC player, what the growth potential for the card was, the scarcity of the card, what the grade of the card was, and sort of this catch-all intangibles bucket. Those were the 5 areas, the 5 criteria that I used to help sort of rate these cards in my own opinion for my own collection. But if something's really important to you, like you're a vintage collector and centering is the most important thing to you, maybe one of these criteria is centering. So then all you need to do is go through your list of cards and manually key in what your score is for each of them. So all you would do is 10, 10, 10, 8, 10. And there you go. Now step 3 is setting up your score. So here in my example, I put Cardi-C score, and all you need to do is take the sum of your scoring scale. So just so we're doing it live and we're following along, you highlight that, you close the parenthesis, and you're good to go. Now, a quick Excel trick for you. If you wanted to drag this formula down, you place your cursor over the bottom right hand box, and you can just drag this down to copy the formula down. I also like putting your cursor on this cell and then holding shift and just using the down arrow to go all the way down to the bottom. And if you press Control D at this point, it will copy all of that down for you. So if you go all the way down, hit Control D, it does the same thing. Just a quicker, easier way if you're really good with keyboards to not focus on using your mouse so much. I also put in $1 per point here to help me just visualize which cards are sort of cheaper and more cost effective for me to buy. This part definitely isn't needed, but it's another helpful analytic point that you can refer to. So I've mentioned a couple times that this is built off of like a lineup optimizer for daily fantasy sports. Essentially what we've done is we've created our own roster of cards. We've set our projected points, and now we're saying we need to stay within our salary, within the budget, and we want to maximize the number of points that we get for our collection. So what I did over here was just typed this locked in column or locked in title, and then just put a bunch of zeros in here. Now this is the value that Solver is going to use and change in order to identify which cards maximizes our total score based on our budget. So you want to type in something like locked in or cards selected and hit OK. We'll just leave that be for now. Now we want to go down here and pick out our criteria. We have our budget, we have the score, and we have the dollar spend. So the budget, you can hard code this, meaning go in here and just type in however much, whatever budget you're working for. So if we wanted to do 3,500, you just typed in 3,500. I was working in a workbook here, so I will go equals, go back to the last tab, and click on the budget that I'm working with. Press enter, and now all that workbook is sort of tied together. So if I change something on this tab and say I wanted to do $275 per month instead of $350, now I don't need to go back over here and update that because it automatically flows through. So the next item that you need to do is you have to create a formula that's going to change and it's going to calculate your score. So what we do is we use a formula called sum product. And now what sum product does is it takes each data point in here and multiplies it by each data point over here. So in our scenario, if this is 0, it's going to multiply N6 by E6. So 48 times 0, 36 times 0, 37 times 0, and then it's going to add up the sum of all those products, i.e. sum product. So what we're going to do is hit equals sum product we'll type the score, and then you don't need to hit multiply or anything. You just press comma and then also highlight the card selected column. So because everything over in column N is 0 right now, your score is going to be 0. Now your dollar spend is also going to be a sum product formula. It's going to take the total price that you're working with for these cards in your quote-unquote roster and multiply that by the cards selected over here. So again, because we don't have any cards selected over here, our total spend is going to be 0. Now before we get into actually working within Solver, what we want to do is talk a little bit about limitations that we want to put into place. So our only limitation right now is we want to stay underneath our budget of $2,738. But you'll see up here that I put multiple cards or multiple versions of the same card into place. I don't want to buy a PSA 3 if I've already acquired a PSA Authentic. So what I did down here was I typed out the name of the card that I'm looking for. I've set a limit of 1. And then in column D, I've just created a sum if formula. Now all this says is add together. We'll sum this row over here if this guy over here, the card, is equal to this card. So essentially what it's doing is it's saying we're going to take the sum of any of the Wilson Franks Ted Williams. We're going to take the sum of any of the 39 play ball Ted Williams. An easier way to do this is just to throw a formula in here that says equal sum and then select it like this. It gets the same job done. But by using some ifs, I can come down here and throw another Ted Williams Wilson Franks in here. Say I wanted to do a PSA 5 and fill out all this information. I wouldn't have to go in and alter the formula again. I could just rely on the sum if. And what we're going to tell Solver to do is we're going to tell Solver, I only want one of those cards. And we're going to do that through setting a condition. So now we have our entire workbook created. It's all set to be run through Solver. Now before we actually run Solver, we have to enable it. And how we can do that is going to File, go down to Options, and then hit Add-ins. So when you're in Add-ins down here, you should see Solver add-in in this inactive application add-in. And how you would activate the add-in is where it says Manage Excel Add-ins right here. You want to hit Go, and then you just want to check this box off and hit OK. Once you have Solver checked off, you should be good to go. You might want to just save Excel, close it, open it back up if it doesn't appear. But how you get to Solver is clicking on the Data tab in the ribbon up top, and it's going to be all the way over to the right here where it says Solver. So we click on that, and now we need to go through, set our objective, set our variables, and then set the constraints that we want to work with. Our first objective is to set the score to the highest thing possible. So all you need to do is hit this little arrow button and select your score cell. I already had selected a score cell, so it had it twice. We'll just keep it one. So you could maximize it, you could minimize it, or you could set it to a certain value. Next up, you want to change your variable cells. So remember when we said we were putting together that card selected column? Well, this is where it comes into play. We want to change these cells over here, N6 to N28. Those are going to be the cells that we change in order to identify which cards are sort of the optimal solution to add for our collection. So now we're almost there. We just need to add the constraints in. And the first two constraints, or the first constraint you need to add, is this binary constraint. So what happens if we take away this binary constraint is we can solve it. And what it'll do is it will create fractions. Now we can't buy a fraction of a card. So what we want to do is we want to set a constraint over this variable to be binary. Now how you add a constraint is you hit this add button, you select a cell or a group of cells. So we're just going to select the card selected column over here, and in the middle we're going to hit binary. So we hit binary, we click OK, and then we go into the constraints and we can see it's right here. Now you see a bunch of other constraints in here. All that is the card constraints that I had talked about over in the bottom left hand corner. And to do that, all we're going to have to do is hit add, go down to the cell reference. We're going to click on this cell right here. So this is the total number of Wilson Franks Ted Williams play ball cards that are included in our solution. We want that to be less than or equal to, and then our limit is 1. So then you hit OK, and then it adds that. I'm going to hit cancel because I already have that in there, but you would repeat that for each card that you're looking to sort of constrain. Again, this is just because in my roster of cards, I wanted to play out different scenarios for cards in different grades. So your final step before you run Solver is to make sure that this is checked off, make unconstrained variables non-negative. So you can't have a negative number that you add. You can only buy one card. So it's going to be 1, 0, 2, 3, 4. But because we set it to binary and we want to make sure it's not negative, you just got to check this box off. And then the solving method, I just click on Simplex LP because it's the best option for us at this given point in time. So all we need to do is hit solve, and you should get a solver results panel screen that looks like this. Solver found an integer solution within tolerance. All constraints are satisfied. Now, if you wanted to restore the original value, so change everything back to 0, or go back to change some additional things in Solver, you would just check this box off. But because we're all set with the solution, we're going to say keep Solver solution, and then make sure this box is not checked off and hit OK. Now the last thing we're going to do to make this a little bit more user-friendly is just provide some conditional formatting so that each of the cards that were selected that have a 1 here are highlighted. So we can quickly tell what Solver selected for us. So all we need to do is highlight this section. Oops. And then go up to Conditional Formatting, New Rule, use a formula to determine which cells to format. And what we're going to do here is select, for me, it's N6. It's the first item, the first card in your variable data set here. And we don't want this cell to lock in. That's what the dollar signs are doing. We only want the row to lock in. So we're going to hit N6 and delete that first or the second dollar sign. So you lock the row N, and then you lock the row N, and then you have 6, so it's going to go down through the entire selection. Then we want to make that is greater than or equal to 1. Set our format. I like doing this minty green color, so we can select that, and then when we hit OK, everything that was given a 1 was selected. And just to show that it's iterative, it works on its own, we'll change all those to zeros. We'll go back up to the data tab. We can hit Solver. We'll solve that again, and we have the same values that were returned that are all highlighted in minty green. Now you could run through a bunch of different scenarios here. You could change your PC scoring scale. We could even go into Solver and say, what is the minimum value that we would be able to get out of this? And if we hit solve, your minimum value says you didn't pick up anything, which makes sense, right? You could change things to, we'll change that back to max. You could add additional constraints to say that I'm locking in a particular card. And all you would need to do that is say add constraint, and then say we wanted to add this third card here. 2018 Gypsy Queen bases around the league auto. Say, I absolutely want this. I don't care what Solver says I should do. I want this card for my collection and I'm buying it next year. What you can do is go over to here, select the cell, say is equal to 1. You hit add, and then you rerun Solver. And you can see this card was selected, and there were a couple cards. I think this PSA 9 Kershaw came off. And then the Jaylen Brown in our original sort of solution was in a PSA 10. It's now telling us to buy a PSA 9. So you can play around with it to see how you can optimize which cards you want for your collection. And it's a little bit more of an analytical way to approach it. But that's all I got for you guys today. This is the way that I sort of operate. I'm very left-brained. I love using Excel. I use it in my day-to-day job all the time. So where I can take the knowledge that I've built up through my career and apply it to sports cards and be in a position to share that knowledge with you all, I try to do so. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Is this something that you're going to try and do for your own collection, or is it too nitty-gritty, left-brained, analytical? Do you like picking cards up based more on your gut and emotion? That's all I got for you guys today. I'm Cardi-C. We'll catch you guys later.